The sermon today has to do a faith of a slave. Have you guys ever heard about Moses?
A what?
Moses.
Yes, sir.
Tell me a little bit about what you know about Moses. Two words.
He was a leader.
A leader, deliverer,
A freedom fighter.
freedom fighter, the greatest man that ever existed in that time before Jesus. Can we all agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the greatest, Jesus himself spoke about it. It's not my word. You know? So, but, you know, when we look about Moses, right, when I grew up, people telling me story, I actually came to understanding that God has chosen Moses. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
God has chosen Moses kind of like arbitrarily to become the leader of Israel. Isn't that true?
Yes.
You know, that usually used to give me a lot of justification because I was like, God, in my own personal prayer, God, Moses was only able to be who he was because you chose him. You had a special, just like Samson, they were strong. Of course, these are two different characters, so just don't join them together. I'm just saying this, the situation regarding their birth was a little special. In fact, Moses was very different. Yes, we know a lot about Moses as everything that we just heard and more, but there is a very, very, very important aspect of Moses' life we rarely spoke about it. Number one, do you guys know who was Moses' father?
Yes, sir.
Amram. Do we even know anything about him?
From the land of Levi.
Exactly.
And that's not much.
Do we know who was Moses' mother? Jochebed. Do we know something about her? Right. Here is the thing. There was a time in this earth that a group of people were living in the indigenous land, happy and nice, and then suddenly supernatural events happen, like famine, problems beyond their control. Got it? They could not control the drought and lack of rain, not in their power. And God, on this kind of occasion, specially interposed and said, okay, there's no food in Africa, go to United States. And that planet, in that time, would be, there's nothing in Canaan, Jacob and everybody else, through special provision through his son, that's another story, Joseph. You guys going to migrate to Egypt, which was, if you compare today's United States, it was the most powerful nation and more blessed. Okay? And Joseph, and of course the children of Israel, they were there, and they kept on following God's rule, and they were greatly blessed. Right? Especially through Joseph. Until there was a time somebody who was inspired by Satan, we call Pharaoh, decided to voluntarily neglect all the great influences of these great people and say, I actually don't like them. Mm-hmm. They look big, strong. They care about family. They are independent. They work for their own. They don't depend on anybody. They have their own work. They are pastors. Every family is very well structured. One wife, no polygamy, most of them not, and parents really devoted to their kids. And that's why they are doing so well. And they are even richer than we are. What can we do to deal with these people? Okay, let's first of all create a life. Let's go with the people that run that country, which usually have counselors, and usually those counselors will be people who have some kind of religious belief, which at that time was not the same as what Israelites had. And they said, if these people keep multiplying, they will become a problem to us, and not only if we get attacked, if we have a problem somewhere, they may join with them and come against us. That's actually very bad. Like, for instance, most of us who are here in America are not Americans, but if America get attacked, I'm going to be saying, no, we're all going to somehow be part of the mess. So there was that's just baseless in my opinion. Like if Egypt was attacked at that point, the enemy would come and like get everybody. You know, you live there. so but then of course they managed to create this false lie, just like small problem we find at work. It's always going to be that colleague that will be like, hey, you know, that brother didn't do that thing well, and problem began, right? And the Pharaoh was like, okay, that is true. However, there's a thing that the Bible don't say, but Ellen G. White said, Pharaoh could not subdue them right away. You know what? Number one thing, there was a lot of things, but I want to highlight this one. The number one thing that Pharaoh could not do right away is like Israelites were financially independent. Egyptians, during that famine, during their process, because of the need, they were like, oh, I don't want to die. They sold all their properties and a lot of things to the king, so they were subdued. All their land and everything belonged to the king. Israel, no, they had the right of private property, and they would not pay tax as well. They were not taxed because of what Joseph did. And they were very independent. That spirit of independence was power. Pharaoh could not enslave them so long as they were independent. How could you, like, would you tell them, like, don't go to work, you're not going to eat? Well, I have my cattle. You know, I'm going to get milk no matter what, right? Oh, I have my own land. So Pharaoh has, based on the patriarch and prophet, and I advise you to read that. Right in the, it's very hard to notice that, but Ellen G. White said, Pharaoh had to create some kind of system that allowed them to come to work. Because he could not take them away because they were very bright and smart. He wanted to keep using them, but he wanted to enslave them. But the first thing he needed to do is to remove their independent spirit. By making them in the same, putting them, allowing them to be in the same financial situation as the Egyptians were. Now, in that point, he was able to hold sway and enslave them. It's very, very summarized. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but that was at place. It calls us to, you know, it has parallels with our life. We also left our land and we're here. And most of us are wrapped around with death until here. See, now here's the problem, right? Once he succeeded to create that type of situation, he then came up with a decree. The word that we are very familiar with that is called mandate. Okay, we heard that 5 years ago, so it's not that different. Okay, it's very similar. The difference is, whoa, that one was a little more strong. There was a mandate for them to forcibly working. But even though that problem, if you see every little household could do nothing about it because that's a problem that is coming from outside of their home. They're like, okay, we have a problem outside, but we're going to have to be strong at home. You know what happened? They multiplied, they even thrived within the, even in the midst of all that firing things happening. All right? And then that's when Pharaoh was like, ooh, man, I'm enslaving him, beating them up, but they still, their family. Because remember, it's not just like they're being big, like they have to have a very base, family base, a very good nourishment that they come out and like, yeah, I worked two times yesterday, but I'm still going back to work. Because when they come home after all that punishment, that punishment, when they come home, mom and dad and brothers and sisters, they still joy, right? That's maybe another topic to go into as well, but it's very, very powerful. Despite of what situation you're going through, it should not kill your joy within your home. All right, now he said, okay, you know, we have to come up with a new method that we are all familiar with. Some of us really don't pay attention to that. It's called population control. Okay? Now, these are very hot topics, but it's the Bible, it's there. It's not just one time, many times. Okay? So, but how did it work? Well, there were healthcare workers. Today you would call them obstetricians or midwives. right? But today, it's like you go to the hospital, there's a gynecology, obstetrician doing the delivery, or at least assisting that, right? And he called them. There were two very prominent, they're probably high, top doctors in the country. Like, you only got called on the White House if you are a really, really good doctor. So Pharaoh called these two, hey, you, the top doctor, gotta do something. You know what you gotta do? Kill all the babies. Now, so that you don't say it's a conspiracy theory. It's in the Bible. It's not I'm just voicing what I read. Okay? And they waited. But unfortunately, in that particular case, these doctors, these high professionals, feared the Lord. And they happened to be Israelites. So thank God. Imagine if they were Egyptians. And they're like, I'm not killing any babies. In today's world would be, I'm not giving any poisonous substance or whatever. I'm not doing that. And guess what? The king was mad and called them. Hey, come over here. Imagine, Pharaoh was a god at that point. He could just tell you, hey, I'm going to kill you for not hearing what I say. Moses tried to do something, they tried to kill Moses. If they tried to kill Moses, imagine the midwife. Put yourself in the shoes of those midwives. You have a high-paying job, you prestigious and all these. Now you're about to lose all that prestige because you decide not to uplift the mandate. Let me stress that word very well. Okay? And then in front of the king, they're like, listen, I'm sorry. These women are so strong, by the time we reach there, I'm sure they actually lied a little bit, but anyway, they try to save themselves. But they actually, the Bible says, they feared the Lord, and they could not do anything. I think they had a chance to kill if they could. But they feared the Lord, and they did not do it. And then, Pharaoh, I don't think did anything. I didn't hear anything about their faith. God preserved them. In fact, even say, God blessed those midwives for upholding, for not doing wrongdoing. Now the king was very mad, and like, okay, since you're not doing, army, police, and everybody. Do you see the steps? The first mandate was not that hard. The second was tougher. So then there come army, police, and everybody. And how was that killing? You see, one thing is that genocide happening behind closed doors. Yeah. The other thing is grabbing all the babies and throwing them in the river. Do you know what it is? The river at that time was the place where almost everybody went. And can you imagine you trying to go shower and then you see a dead body of a baby? Wow. It's different to see an adult dead body and a baby dead body. It's two different experiences. You don't want to see that. And we don't know how many, but we know that happened. Based on the Bible. Imagine and people were doing that. People lost sensitivity somehow, and they were doing that. And actually, the imagination just gave me chills. It's really bad. Yeah, this was happening. And this was about what? The reason was clear there. Population control. What type of group of people need to be controlled on multiple occasions? The ones who fear God. Mm-hmm. Is it scary enough? All right. There was a slave that in the highest, in this second, and even in the midst of all that fight, she's like, I'm not going to do what they do. I'm not scared. I'm going to defy the odds. So imagine a little baby, they cry at night. Those houses they had no, whatever sound barrier installation, the neighbors would definitely hear. Right? So, and she, Jochebed, as you rightly said, managed to keep that baby for 3 months. I can only imagine. Imagine, I have a little boy, so I'm like, the first 3 months, you're not sleeping. And then there's police, army everywhere. And not only, because she resisted that, you know what was going to come? They were not just going to kill the baby. They were going to kill her and who else. So that was That was not just like they're going to kill my baby. They will come and destroy my whole house. And she was aware with full consciousness of what it is. But this woman, like Mary, mother of Jesus, I respect her. What happened is this woman and the husband, who's not spoken about, they both Levi. Levi is a tribe that, later on were dedicated especially for God. It's not only the woman. That home must have been intact because, yes, the woman was there hiding. I'm sure the father was doing all he can to protect his home and provide. Both of them were like in a very tight fight. It was like, okay, we're dealing with external, non-controllable factors. But within our home, we are a team to uphold God's commandment. Despite of when the world is falling into pieces and when we clearly going to be killed. Jochebed and Hamron, they united in a special fight. We're going to do this as long as we can. Until we reach the point that it's going to be obvious. The kid was growing and was making even bigger noise. And was trying to So she was like, okay. And which is, imagine, especially you and you, my sister, you guys are mothers. You know how it feels to wrap around your baby and put it on the river and let it go. I'm sure that mother is like, I'm not even going to see it. I'm just going to put it on the river and not even see it because I'm sure it was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But also so that you notice that house was special. The sister was another person. So that you see those parents were doing their job. The sister, even without being forced or compelled, she was like, I want to know what's going to happen with my brother. And she went on watching. And not only she watched, during those times when the king had or queen, whoever had all the power, you can't just come and talk to them. I wasn't a God. You could not just come and talk to the president or anybody. Who are you? You have to pass through all that security. They would kill you by the time you try to say a word. That little kid went where the daughter of Pharaoh was bathing and said, hey, do you need help? I'm invited. Imagine the courage. You only get that courage from above. And you have to be very well educated as a child to care about your brother so much that you put your life in peril. Just like the mother was, the daughter was. So you can see those parents doing their job very well. You can see their kids, not on the other kids. But not only. There's a lot of things to read in Patriarch and Prophet, but because of time, I don't want to go in there. That woman, Jochebed, she had to have a faith that defied normal faith to be able to stand in the face of death and everything else, all the threats that are coming, and keep the kid holding on there. I'm sure she was not even getting out anyway. Because imagine, first of all, she was pregnant. Pregnancy takes 9 months. The law was there for very long. I mean, people were not, she had to hide herself during the pregnancy. Because people would have known, that was a pregnant, where was the baby? And so she had to confine herself out of the, she deprived, let me put the other word, she deprived herself from other worldly things in order to care for the people that God specially put in their hands. Like we all have the same experience. Even though God had already, say that he's going to free his people through a leader, he did not just arbitrarily came and say, it's Moses. Let me show you one thing. It's the faith and the prayer of the parents. If God was like, how do I describe it? How do I put it in a way that is actually very, I'm not misrepresenting God's word. Sometime, God will do things through us, through your sons, or anybody else, not because of that particular son has special things. It's the father, the parents have created the conditions for God to bless that son. The same thing happened with Jesus. Did you notice that God carefully was choosing lineage of Jesus? It was not because of just genes. It was mostly because of behavior. Look, Mary. Mary and Jochebed are very similar in behavior. Joseph of Jesus, very similar, very similar. Remember, while Mary, can you imagine at that time your wife, your promised wife is pregnant and is virgin? Go on the street and see how your friend will talk to you as a man. Oh, do you really believe it? Let's just stone her to death. And at that time, it's like, put her in the street, stone her to death. Do you know how much that men have to put up to protect that little baby, little girl, Mary? We can see some parallels. How family, God-fearing parents can bless. And we also know by the spirit of prophecy, desires of age, that Jesus learned most of the things from his mama. You can also go throughout the Bible and analyze all the great men that exist and look at their mother. And you will see a similarity that I'm just describing here. Of course, the mother, but also the father, because they all. Samuel is another example. Did you see the mother was praying? And I can go on and on and on. But let's stick with Moses. The mother was a God-fearing woman, even before she knew that. Remember, when she saw the baby, all they was like, "Oh, this baby is beautiful." They did not say, "Oh, this is the chosen of God." No, there's nothing written in the Bible like that. All they saw was a beautiful baby. Tell me one thing, what father in this planet don't see their newborn as a beautiful? It's a normal feeling. Everybody, no matter how she look, or he or the baby look, you will always look them as the most beautiful thing on the planet. That's a normal feeling, right? It's like, but they did not say this is the prophet who's going. No, they said this is a beautiful son. I'm not kidding. No, I don't want, I'll keep my child. Normal parental instinct. But because of their work, God rewarded them. But if you're thinking I'm just making it up, look what happened. When Miriam went to speak with Pharaoh's daughter, and look how smart that little kid was. Quickly, do you need help to raise your child? And of course, she'd be like, yes, do it. Now here, look at the problem here. If you see the parallels of that time, it's not that far from today. Egyptian style, they did not, so it seems like, let me just use this, it seems like they had a culture that you give your kids to the institutions to be raised. Like for instance, the priest would raise the kids and teach them, and then, or whatever it is. In today's, to make it simple, it's like, send your kid to whatever. What's the call?
Daycare?
Daycare. As a baby. Yeah, this is very, very strong though. Very, very important because the Bible has shown us. But that Miriam already knew that the Egyptian would have this kind of style, but the Hebrews, they did not have that. They're like family, and they believe in their circle to nourish and raise their child. And it just so happened that the babysitter they chose was the mother. And here is how we see the spirit and the character of that woman. What did she do during those, Ellen G. White said 12 years. Do you guys remember what she did? She trained her. I'm sure she was probably even scared to say, hey, I'm your mother. I don't know, I'm just making it up. But everybody knew he was the son of the daughter of Pharaoh. You knew, imagine, no, I'm just here, in a daycare. But my house is in a palace. My mom is, he was just a baby. He believed what you put in her mind. But that woman knew what the scientists are only discovering it now, that the first 12 years, I would even say the first 5 years, is where you hit or you miss. Well, I mean, you go to Google if you doubt it. We're only finding out now, but God already knew from the beginning. And he even said, educate your child from the beginning. And when he grew up, he will never depart. Moses, the great, would not be who he was if the mother did not take special care. In fact, when the mother learned that he would only stay with him for a little bit, then after that he would go to the palace and be educated on those other systems of traditions that differs far from what God's required. She dedicated even a special attention to that child. It's not that because she was, it's not favoritism. Don't confuse that. I know a lot of parents have favoritism, but that was not. She understood the dangers. Other kids would still stay in that environment that still nourish the thinking of the real God. But this particular son was going to go to the universities today. Make sense? To an environment that God image is being destroyed systematically. He's going to go to a place where they're teaching him about drag queen and all this nonsense that that God do not accept. Knowing that, she took special time with that kid. Mary did the same. Samuel's mother did the same, and I can go on and on. Even Isaac's wife, what's the name? Rebecca, did the same to Jacob. Yeah, she got things missed. She missed some steps, but she did the same. Okay? Here is the thing. Moses, by the time he was 12, all he needed to become a man was already formed in him. This is very true. Your child, you'll have, science says have, even Ellen White keep repeating that in all her books, have up to 8 years to actually hit or miss. And even it says that in the last days, so many parents will be surprised because they'll be like, oh, God, why can't I make it to heaven because I'm this great woman, great wife, but they neglected this the most important, I'm going to stress it, the most important work of a man, of a woman, raising a child. This is one of the most important superpower a woman has. Mm-hmm. It's only woman who can bring a child to this planet. There's no other being that can do that. Man cannot. We have all these good prerogatives. Yeah, we're the man, but only a woman can bring a woman to this planet. That's a superpower that now today they're trying to teach us that no, you don't have to be a woman. You can be a man. Being a woman is not an inferior thing. Can you imagine you're the only one who can do that? Anyway, not only you bring the child, but you have the ability to nourish this child. And if you're a good, God-fearing woman, your child will be who you make it. Will be who you make him. And it's a very hard topic. And, I have a lot of friends. And it's my fear, too, because I'm a father. And I see, and I also see, I'm not going to go far, I see it in my own mother. Like, some of my brothers and my sisters, I'm like, hey, man, why are you talking about him? I see that in you too. You see what I'm saying? So now that I grew up, I'm like, I can see why. Because mama is like that. Mm. You see what I'm saying? And she's like, no, yeah, talk to him. Don't talk to your brother because he's like, why would I talk to him? I'd rather talk to you. Because that's when it all started. Mm. Moses went on to become, they were preparing him to be Pharaoh. Mm-hmm. See, it's like today, you are that age, they're telling you you're going to be on the White House, be the president. All you need to do is just grow up. And not only that, here today, presidents have really less power. Pharaoh they were gods. They could do whatever they want. That's right. There was no Supreme Court or anybody to tell them. They had the power, luxury, and all that. And that little boy at 12, when he was exposed to that, and even when they started training him into those culture, those things did not move him. That's why The scripture in the Hebrew 11, let me just find it, and let me just read it all. Hebrew 11:23 saying, by faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was proper child, and they were not afraid of the mandate. By faith, when he was come to years, he refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. Oh, what a title. Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. For he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. And the 27 says, by faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king. Imagine you having, let me bring some context to us again. Do you know that the lifestyle we have today is of a very rich person in 2,000 years ago? Did you know that? Huh? And more than that, right? Thank you, my brother. No, don't worry, you can talk, brother. More than that, we, like, sometimes, a revelation said, remember your, they always say remember, to when he's trying to talk to his kids. When Jesus is talking to his kids, say, remember. See, there's a way, like, sometimes when you face difficulty, and this is a digression, just look where you're coming from, especially as immigrants. You'll be very thankful. Every time you look, if you still have some pictures, just look where you're coming from. I know you're going through problems at work, but trust me, you'll be like, that's
Yes,
God, I'm coming from very far. That's why God always say, remember. And then once you remember, you'll see how much God has done to you. Just the fact that you have one more day to live, look back on your life, you see, like there was a lot of instances that you couldn't even make it alive. All of us have some kind of a story like that.
yeah.
Not only that, today we have what? We have cars. All the adults here, I believe they drive. Do you know what it is to have a car? Imagine just drive 100, I just drove 100 miles. It would have taken a whole year for an Egyptian to drive that fast. You know what I'm saying? Listen, I have clothes. They would have one clothes for the whole year. They would like wear the same clothes and then go to the river, wash it, let it dry while they're naked, waiting him to be dry, and wear it again. Listen, we don't do that. We have socks. Like, what else am I going to say? Like, food. Listen, did you see our plates? Now, don't take me wrong. I'm comparing for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. They only had bread and that's it. Did you see how Moses ran away from Egypt to Midian? Barefoot, running. They didn't need no gym. They just like marathon, right? Today, if your life is in danger, my brother will get his Audi and bro, you're very rich. So compare that, okay? Now, why am I saying? I know I'm digressing, but why am I saying that? The circumstances we have today are very similar temptation as Moses had gone through. He had all these services. He didn't have Wi-Fi. We do have Wi-Fi. Probably have more than Moses had. You know what I'm saying? And all these accommodations that we have in this new Egypt that I call the United States, are we willing to, for faith, all these circumstances that we have in order, by faith, to believe in the promise of the future and withstand the principles of God? And when the mandates come back in, are we able to like hid our most greatest treasures, be that our child or our faith, and not be afraid to sell out when the pressure is out? Not only that, remember I began saying that the enslavement didn't start from one day to another. It was a process. And one of them was like break out their financial independence. In our daily basis, I know this is a hard topic, especially when you come to America. When I came here, the first thing they said, you gotta have a credit card. Then you gotta have a credit score. And then I was like, hold on a minute, they're doing harder way for you to be able to live here. Listen, I'm talking about myself, nobody else, okay? And I was like, wow. Yes, indeed, you have to endear yourself somehow. But we are child of God, and God clearly said in the Bible, the debtor is the slave of the lender. And there's a way they did it in the past. And with that, they created enslavement. And with enslavement, the mandate came. Trust me, there was a lot of mothers from Israel that gave away their kids. Right? Although we are talking about Jochebed, but remember there were a lot of dead bodies in the river. And they were Israelite kids. So imagine if there was 3 or 4 kind of Jochebed, or 5 or 10, they would not be able to do. Or like the midwives, that in the face of danger, they'd be like, nope, Pharaoh, you willingly can come and kill us. And you know what? If Pharaoh would have tried to do that, oh, God would have interposed. If the people at that point were like, oh, you're trying to come and kill our kids, you got to pass through me, the Pharaoh. You know what I'm saying? But no, there was, in my conjecture, there was some kind of compromise they've made. Their livelihood was compromised by that time. So many fathers was easy. Oh, you just 1 kid, I have 5 more. Take it. God will forgive me later. So we have to be careful though. I know this is a very strange sermon. But there is no point of here be reading the Bible beautifully and the verses and memorizing it if we don't see the context and if we don't apply it to what we are living. We are a last day generation, and the situation is not different. The devil did not change his playbook. No, he did not change it. He plays the same tactic, just using different circumstances. And our goal is to hear what God is saying and learn. He gave us this history to learn from it and then apply and then try, if we can, do it differently, or be encouraged by people like Jochebed. And for the ones who would be like, oh, well, my kids are already grown up. They're already past 12. What can I do? Well, there's one thing that Jochebed never ceased to do, which is prayer. And in fact, it was the prayer of that mother that made God answer to her. Even before she gave birth, she was already praying. It's not patriarch and prophet. Again, like I said, I don't want to read because it's going to take us forever. But just read that part. That woman was a woman of prayer. So was the mother of Samuel. Remember, she was praying, and the church leader were saying she's drunk. Church leader. I mean, I'm not making it up. She was praying in the temple, and like, oh, well, this woman is drunk. You know, and even though they were scolding her, she did not stop praying. And as soon as the baby came out, like, you dedicated to the Lord. And we saw who that man was, Samuel, and everybody else, Moses and everybody else. So we have a responsibility. And to finalize, look at the word today. Yes, the violence has increased so greatly. But did you see the houses? Do you see the parents? Do you see how selfish we are? How neglectful we are? Do you see how we spend all our time going to work, make that money, and leave our child to be taken care of by somebody else that we don't know? And then when they grow up, we're like, God, why this to me? Why me? Yes, money is important, food is important, but your spiritual salvation, like Moses did, was more important than this temporal blessings. If there's a way that you can find a balance, God only, listen, even in his prayer, I know I'm going a little far, but I need to say this. In the prayer that Jesus taught the disciple, he did not say, our daily cars and water and Wi-Fi, he said, our daily bread. one time, yeah, there was no Wi-Fi. He said bread. Bread, that's the most important thing that God said. This is the thing you need to ask. Everything else shall be added unto you. Because they are not important for your growth. Spiritual growth. Your food is, the type of food you eat is very important. That's why he said, pray that to God. And if you are able to secure that, amen. Now, if you don't have card and no Wi-Fi, don't worry. Let's do like Jochebed. There's eyes watching us, and God is ready to interpose. That's all I have to say today, and may God bless us.
Amen.
Amen.